Well, good afternoon again, guys. Today I'm going to show you how I put together a dip run or foam rollover wing. This one is for the Taube. I've actually made one half, and I'm going to make the other half and show you guys how I do it. Okay, so first of all, here we are, here's the wing. Now, I've actually cut this out on my CNC machine, but should you not have a CNC machine and you're cutting this out by hand, it's fairly easy to cut out. I spray glue the pattern, glue it onto the Depron or the foam board or whatever you're using, and then cut around the paper pattern. That's the easiest way. Mark through where all your, for instance, where your slots are, although you can actually cut them out too through the paper pattern. And when it comes to the cutting out the slot for the spar, generally what I do, or what I used to do before I had the CNC machine that did it for me, I would simply get here's my piece of foam. I would cut just a slot part way into the foam, not right through, just part way in, like that. And then I would simply peel out, you can see this on the, simply peel out between the two cuts. I'll do it on the bench, it's easier. And it's easy to peel out like this. So there we are, that's peeling the Depron out of the slot, and then I would get my piece of carbon fibre and I would simply run it in the slot, run it sideways till it's a nice fit, and then you can simply, that's the slot for your carbon fibre too. That's the way I used to do it before I had my CNC machine, and it does quite a good job. Now, in the past I've used all sorts of glue to glue the carbon fibre spar in. I used to use epoxy. It's very slow and it's very messy. I've used CA, super glue. I've used all. But I find the easiest and my best way, as I found, is to simply use hot glue. Here's my spar. Test fit, make sure it fits okay. And then I simply run a bead down either side of the slot. And in with the carbon fibre spar. Make sure it's nice and flat. I generally just use a steel ruler to make sure it's flat into the. Always have some bits of scrap. Foam. I always have a few bits of foam scrap lying around, as you will, and then simply run a bead across the top. You don't have to be too careful with this, because I'm going to use the piece of Depron just to wipe it down, wipe off any excess. And there we go, that's basically it. nice and flat. That's going to dry in a couple of minutes, and there we are. We don't have to mess about too much to do that. If it was on a flat wing, I would simply put the carbon spar on the underside and then maybe a piece of tape over it afterwards just to hide it, but that's right. So now we need to get this ready to roll, and the most important thing is to make sure you tape it up and tape it well, because if you don't, when you start rolling and bending the leading edge over, it will crack. Believe me, it will crack. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark where my centre line is on the foam. I know my centre line is there, and this one is, I think it was 20. If you have the plans, you'll see the mark where the centre line is anyway. But I'm going to mark that there. I think it's and there. So that's my centre line there. I'll put a line there. So I know that's my centre line. So I'm going to turn it over, and on the outside, I'm going to tape. Making sure that the tape is longer than I need. One first of all down the centre. I'm just going to use a spatula just to make sure it's glued on there pretty well, because as I say, if it's not on there well, it will crack. When you do your joint, make sure you overlap by 10 mil, 3/8 of an inch at least, because again, if you don't have enough overlap, the tape will separate, and again it'll crack. Take my word for it, it will crack. So I'm overlapping. Doesn't have to be fancy, wrinkly free or anything. I'm actually overlapping the tape by about 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to go out on the bottom. The bottom, I'm not going to be rolling the bottom that much, so I'm only going to go out a couple of layers. On the top I'm going to be rolling a little more, so I'm going to go maybe 3 or 4 layers just to be sure, because I've done it before and not gone quite far enough, and where the tape is finished and I've gone to try and roll it a bit, it's actually cracked on the edge of the tape. So there we go. I don't think I need to go any further than that, because I'm not going to be rolling any further. So basically that's where I've taped. You can see I'm just going to fold over the edges of the tape here, because you can actually cut it off if you want, but I find if I cut it off, then it's difficult to get hold of it to peel it back. So just fold it back on itself so that it's not sort of getting in your way, and folding over and sticking everything together. Okay, so I've just sort of just sort of folded the tape over on the edge, nothing fancy, just folded it over. Make sure that this tape runs through at least to that point. Otherwise, again, if you decide you're going to cut the tape round there, it will crack on that corner, believe me, it will crack. So just make sure that the tape is glued down well onto your foam. Now I'm going to use a fork, just to, if I can find it, just an ordinary fork. And I'm going to get my centre. In the centre of the prongs of the fork, and then I'm just going to run it down against the edge of the straight edge, the ruler, just a couple of times, just till it breaks through the surface of the foam. Like that. And then before I roll it over, I'm going to get, you can use a broomstick, a piece of tube, whatever. This is just a piece of plastic pipe. And I'm just going to roll slightly, just a little bit at the leading edge at the bottom. Just going to pull that leading edge up a bit because this is a Clark Y, or close to, and so the leading edge at the bottom will lift slightly, and then I'm going to roll from the leading edge for the top of the airfoil. Again, I'm not going to go beyond where I've got the tape, otherwise, as I say, it will crack. It's really only this front edge that needs to be rolled. It just makes it easier. So that's all I've done. I've just rolled the top and the bottom slightly, and now I'm gonna pull this over on the, very carefully. Just going to work it over into the slots. You will see it diving into the slots of the, where you've run the fork through. So just feed it gently. If it's going to crack anywhere, it will crack from this point here. If you're cutting this out by hand, what I'd recommend is, rather than taking this right to a point here, just leave some in there. Leave the foam in there until you've actually rolled it, and then you can cut it out afterwards, because as you're rolling this over, it does tend to want to crack at this point. If it does, you let it go. So hopefully we'll get it over without a crack. But I know I've done it in the past, and it does tend to want to crack at that point. Okay, I've got it right over now. So now that's nice. So what I'm going to do now, again, if it's on your plans, you will have a shaded area down here and round here where we need to thin this off. Because I don't, I'm just going to measure that. I think that's about 28 there, and about 25 there. That. same with this. I'm just going to mark around there, literally down to 0. Again, this will be on the fan. So that's the marks. They're the marks I've put on. And now I'm going to get a knife. This is not easy to do. I'm going to do it here, but I do it on the edge of the bench. I don't know if you can see this, guys. I'll just get it started and then what I'm doing, I'm trying to lead it down on the mark that I've got there and virtually to 0, or as near to 0 as I can. It's not super important because I'm going to sand it afterwards. So that's the bit that I've sliced off. Then I'm going to go around there, and do the same thing. So that's the edge. As I say, it's not necessarily pretty. I've only got it rough. Now I'm going to get a sander, a sanding block. Sanding block. I'm going to sand this edge to that mark, or as near to that mark as I can, and virtually down to 0 on the leading edge, on the trailing edge. Okay. Okay, so now that's the chamfer I've put on the bottom, and as you can see that's virtually down to 0 on that trailing edge. It's on this is actually on the top, the top roll section that I've done the chamfer. Okay, now we can stick the formers or the ribs in place. again, I simply use hot glue for this. It's just the easiest way, I think. You can use whatever glue you like. You can use CA, you can use Yoo-hoo, you can use whatever you like. I tend to just use simply use hot glue. It's quick. Might be a little bit more weight, but do I care? Really? A little bit, tiny bit of weight is not going to make a lot of difference. Just test fit the ribs. If, again, now because I've done this on the CNC machine, what I do, I cut my slots, and I don't cut them right through. You can just see I don't cut the slots right through, and this is good. It's about 3 mil deep, and these tabs just help to line all the ribs, to line all the ribs up. Now, if you're using the printed plans, if you don't want to cut all the slots and these tabs, an easier way is just to mark through where the slots are, mark where the ribs are going to go, and then just simply cut the tabs off and glue them straight on where you've marked the ribs. But as I said, because I use a CNC machine to cut out my ribs, I find it just easier because I don't have any paper plan to show me where the ribs go. Just make sure that when you do, you've got the right ribs in the right place. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. They sort of will only fit properly into the corresponding slots, because if you try to put, we'll say, number 5 in there, the slots don't line up correctly. So it's sort of foolproof, really. Doesn't have to be fancy. Just as long as they're glued in there. Okay, so we've got all the ribs glued in place.